Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I want to give all of you a quick rundown of how to use DaVinci Resolve 17 for basic video editing. So this is meant to be a quick guide and just kind of go through the main features that can get you to the point where you can export a simple edited project. So when you first boot up DaVinci Resolve 17, and I'm on version 17.4, just FYI, then you're going to have this project manager window, and any old projects, you can double click on them to open them. If you need to create a new project, then just go to the bottom right here, click new project, and then give it a name. So I'll call this basic guide, and we'll go ahead and hit create. So the line between these two ways of editing your video have definitely blurred over the years, but I think I still prefer the edit page for reasons like being able to easily add markers, which can be used for setting chapters for YouTube videos, as I'll show you later. And the edit page, being a little bit more full-featured, will have some extra windows that are quite useful as well, like metadata. If you have a clip over here, you can see information about the original video clip, and edit index so that you can see all of your past edits, which can also be used for looking at marker names and marker timings as well. So for the rest of the video, for editing, I'm just going to use the edit page. So the media page over here on the far left, I can also point out that it has this media storage window, which is one way of navigating through your computer. You can set locations over here by right-clicking and adding new locations. If you want to kind of have a remembered storage location where you keep a bunch of your clips or something and you want to bring them into your project, then you can do it that way. So for instance, if I clicked on movies over here, I could just bring everything from the TV folder into the project by dragging and dropping it here, or individual video clips. But over on the edit page, you can pretty easily just bring in media as well by just right-clicking in this media pool window and then choosing import media. So then you can navigate on your computer wherever you have clips you want to use in your project. So I'm going to hold shift down, and I'm just going to select both of these at the same time. So you can left click on one, hold shift, and then left click on another. And that way you can select multiple at once, hit open, and bring them into the project. So if your video clips that you're bringing in have a different resolution or frame rate than your project base settings, you can have it change here by clicking the change button. And if you want to know what your timeline resolution or frame rate is going to be set to, then you can go up to File, Project Settings, and then you can see the timeline resolution and the timeline frame rate here. So you can only change the timeline frame rate before you actually start editing, putting things on the timeline. Otherwise, you'd have to delete your timeline and start it all over again. So just make sure you get your settings right at the start. And if you want to have preset settings, like let's say you always want to edit with 60 FPS, then you can make your changes here. And then with the current project settings, you can save that as a different preset. So I could hit apply here, give it a preset name, and then anytime you want to use that, you can just load that preset. Or you can also right click on a preset and save it as the user default, which will make it load every time you start a new project on this user for your computer. So I'm just going to exit out of the project settings for right now. Okay, so we have our files in the media pool, but we do not have a timeline created yet. The easiest way to create a timeline is simply just to drag one of these video clips that you want to edit first and put them on the timeline area. That's this long area at the bottom that is time coded up here. Another way to do it is to right click in the media pool, go to timelines, create new timeline, and give it a name. So I just got tutorial 1 here, and that will create a timeline as well. And now any files we want to edit, we can just bring them down here. Now, if you want to only bring part of a video clip onto your timeline, you can double click on a video clip, which is going to open it in this preview window. Go to where you want to start bringing the video clip in, hit I to set an endpoint. Go to where you want that imported footage to end, hit O to set an out point, and now you drag this onto the timeline. So now rather than bringing in the entire video, we're only bringing in part of it. So we can also see that by hitting T to go into trim mode. So if a video clip has more source footage in the media pool than is what's on the timeline in this particular cut of a clip, then you can left click on the edge and you can adjust the duration of it. So I can change this starting point for this, and you'll see that extends how big the clip is in our timeline. But with this clip over here on the left, because I just dragged and dropped it straight from the media pool onto the timeline, you can see when we go to the edge, it's red, which means we're at the end of the footage, so we can only shorten it by left clicking and then bringing it in. So the trim edit mode tool once again, hitting T as a hotkey can be used for easily adjusting the duration and the timing of the footage on your clips. And we can go to the selection mode tool with A if we want to move a clip around. So you could just left click and drag it around the timeline. You can see snapping is enabled by default, but you can also turn snapping off by clicking here if you won't need to do that for some reason. Maybe you do want to just drag this over the edge of one of the clips, but snapping's there so that you don't accidentally do that. You can also left click and drag boxes around your clips if you want to move them all at once. And let's just position this at the start of the video. So to play what's in your timeline to this preview window, you can hit spacebar and you can see our video playing back here. You can left click at any point in the timeline to play at an exact moment. So I'll left click over here. While I'm holding, it doesn't play, but as soon as I let go, it's going to continue playing. And I can hit the stop button or spacebar in order to stop the playback. So when I have my video clips on the timeline and I don't really need the media pool or the edit index, you can click up here at the top left where it says media pool to turn it off, and edit index to turn that off as well. That just gives you more room to work with. What is more relevant when you're editing your clips is going to be in the inspector. So you can click in the top right to open that up, and you'll see that this has settings for things like zoom, position, cropping of your videos, composite mode if you want to have one video clip lay on top of another one, and then change it to something like add colors. Speed change here, where you can have a video play back at a faster speed. And one thing you'll notice about pretty much all of these settings is that they have a gray keyframing diamond to the right of the property. So if you need to have a property change across time or to animate it, then you can use these keyframing diamonds in order to do so. So if I go to the start here and I decide, okay, I want to zoom in on a specific area of this video clip, then I can find the point in the timeline I want to start zooming in. I can click on the keyframing diamond, leave it at 1.0 to mark that this is going to be the starting point for the animation. Go to another point in our timeline and change the value of that property. And you'll notice as soon as I change it, the keyframing diamond turns red here too. So it's adding another keyframe. And when you have two keyframes, DaVinci Resolve will animate between the values of those property across time. So now if we go back a little bit and we hit play, then we're going to see we're getting a zoom in across time based on those two keyframing positions and their values. And you can see all of your keyframes if you click on this keyframe icon on your video clip in the timeline. So you can see the transform keyframes, and you can actually snap to them and then change the property again if you need it to zoom in more. You can also move them around. So you could just left click and drag this over here if you want it to end at a different position in your timeline. And then just snap to the first one, hit play, and you can preview your animation again. I can also keyframe position here. Go to the second keyframe and then adjust the position. Since we're zoomed in, we can look at a different portion of the screen. So we could go over there. And now it's not only going to zoom in, but it's going to zoom in on a particular area of the screen. So I'll show you how to do that same thing, but a little easier, specifically when you're doing zooming and position changes. If we go to media pool and I take this soul clip, I'm going to position it on the timeline, just dragging and dropping it. So with this clip here, I'm going to enable something called dynamic zoom in the inspector. And you might see the video kind of just pop in there for a second, but it doesn't really give you any other indication of what's actually happening. So in the preview window, go to the bottom left-hand section right around here, and then click on this drop down and change it to dynamic zoom. And then you'll actually see what's happening. So the green box is your starting point and the red box is your ending point. And this will occur over the duration of the clip in your timeline. So what this means right now is that at the start of the clip, this is going to be how zoomed in we are. And then at the end of the clip, we're going to be zoomed out to this red box. So if you change your settings, basically clicking on the handles and either adjusting the zoom, or you can also move these boxes around and then you'll see this dotted line appear. Then you can change the zoom and the position at the start and end of your clips. So this can be an easier way of doing simple zooms for your clips. So let's say that we wanted to have it start in the bottom left over here. So I'm going to leave it zoomed in about there. But then at the end, we wanted it to be zoomed in at the top right. So I'm going to adjust the size of this red box, and I'm also going to pan it over to the top right. So this means at the start, we're at the bottom left here, and we're zoomed in as much as you can see with this box. And then at the end, we've kind of panned over to the top right, following this dotted line path. So if I go to the start here and we hit play, it'll zoom in. You'll see the actual video clip preview. And you can see we're panning to the top right-hand corner. So this is just a more visual way of doing zooming and panning in one go. One thing to note though is if you do cut your clip later using the blade edit mode tool in half like this, then that's also going to affect the speed of the transition because it's going to have the same animation, but now it's occurring across a shorter period of time, and we still end up at that top right hand corner at the end of this video clip. So be careful about that. Also, because we split one clip into two, as you can see here, it's going to be playing the same zoom on the second clip. So you'd have to turn it off on the second clip if you did not want that to occur. Or maybe you just need a completely different dynamic zoom for the second clip. So generally, you want to do your edits before you just throw on dynamic zoom. Pretty much the most basic edit you can make is going to be to split one clip into two, which is to cut a clip. And you can do that using the blade edit mode tool, hotkey B on the keyboard, or you click over here above your timeline. And you just find the position on a clip that you want to split into two, and you left click. And this can snap to the timeline cursor, as you can see here, or you can turn snapping enabled if you need to be very, very precise about where this is going to snap, but you don't want it to be on the cursor for some reason. So you can just left click there. And now we have one clip split into three. And this allows you to either remove one of these clips from your timeline, which you can do by doing Control X, which cuts it and puts it in the memory buffer. You can also right click it and do Ripple Delete. You can see that I actually have this bound to a special hotkey. So I like to edit by doing Shift Space to remove my clips. I find that to just be a very fast way of editing. And you can also drag your clips to other points in your video. So maybe you wanted to go back and forth between different scenes. So you could have a soul clip over here. I'm going to Command C when I have it selected in order to copy it to the memory buffer. Then I'll go over here and Control V to paste it in. Control V to paste it in over here as well. And with this gap in between, you can left click on it to select the space, right click, and then do Ripple Delete. Move everything over to the left. Go over here, left click the space to select it, right click, and then Ripple Delete. And those would be a few of the tools I commonly use when I'm just doing simple video edits. So now whenever we go between clips, it's just going to jump from one clip to another. Now by default, this is just a really immediate cut. There's no transition between them really, though you can add transitions in Resolve. So if you want, you can go up to the effects menu and you'll see this video transitions toolbox. You could just drag one of these transitions between two of your video clips. Now to note, in order for you to be able to use a transition, the left side here, when we click on it, cannot be red. Both sides need to be green somewhat because they need to have video footage from the source to use for that transition. So if I select the border here with left click and then right click and add a, let's say 14 frame cross dissolve, a really simple animation, you'll see that it'll say that there are insufficient handles to apply the transition, meaning there's not enough extra material from the source that it can pull from because we're already at the end of the source video when we're looking at this left side of the cut. So you can trim automatically, or you can skip the clips that have insufficient handles, meaning it's not going to add a transition. So if we trim the clips, you'll see that what happens now is this clip on the left got a little bit shorter. And if we zoom in, you'll see that there's a transition between these two clips now. So I'm going to hit Control Z a couple times. I'm going to manually hit A to go to selection mode, left click on this border and pull it over to the left. Then I will left click on the space between these two clips, right click, Ripple Delete, pull them over. So now if I left click on the border again, you'll see that it's green on both sides. So now we'll be able to easily add in a transition from the video transitions toolbox. So let's just grab something here. The more advanced flashy transitions tend to be under Fusion transitions here, but if you want something basic, I would probably go with Dissolve up here at the top. There's a few different types, or possibly something like triangle left, triangle right, or the iris shapes. So let's just go ahead and grab oval iris, position it on the border between two clips, just drag and drop. The transitions sit on top of your underlying video clips, and we can go to the start of one of those transitions, hit space, and see it play back in the timeline. Of course, if you left click on the transition, a bunch of the settings over in the inspector in the top right. The idea is basically if there's a property you need to edit, you almost always use the inspector for that. So for instance, one thing we could change here would be the ease curve. So if we don't want it to be a linear transition, but to be kind of slow at the start and slow at the end, then we can change the ease to ease in and out, which is going to make the bulk of the transition actually occur in the middle and slow at the start and slow at the end. So if I go over here and I hit space, you'll see that occurs. And generally with the ease curves, things can look a little nicer than just having a simple linear speed. Okay, so now I want to talk about chapter markers, which can be really useful for timestamping your videos. If you're going to be making long videos on YouTube, or even if they're relatively short, like 5 minutes, timestamped chapters can be a helpful way for people to navigate through your videos. And it can also be a way of keeping your project organized so that you remember which part of your video was which section. So if you navigate to part of your video that you want to add a marker node at, and then you make sure that no video clips are selected, because if you select a video clip and you click marker, it's going to add to the clip, not to the timestamp up here at the top. So I'm going to have nothing selected, click on marker, and then we have this marker pop up here at the top. I can double click it and give it a name. So I might just call it chapter 1, hit done. And then if we go over here, can click marker again, and then we'll do chapter 2 and hit done. And the idea here is that this just keeps your project organized. But also, when we export our video, we can export those chapter markers straight to YouTube, as long as you're authenticated with your YouTube account. So when we go to the deliver page for exporting a video, you'll see a bunch of options over here on the top left. You can have custom settings, or you can just go with the defaults for platforms like YouTube, Vimeo, or Twitter. So if you click on YouTube, then you'll see resolution, frame rate, and these probably are going to just match your timeline. You can choose format MP4 QuickTime otherwise known as .mov format. And then there will be this option here to upload directly to YouTube. So if you can't check this and see these fields yet, it's because you haven't authenticated with YouTube. So to do that, you have to go up to DaVinci Resolve Preferences, and then you go to Internet Accounts, and then you can sign in here. So when you click sign in, you'll just be given a browser pop-up window where you just log in with your YouTube account and then select the YouTube channel that you want to actually be able to authenticate with. So once you've signed in, DaVinci Resolve will have the permissions to upload the videos to your channel. And then you can come back over here to the Deliver tab. And when you check Upload directly to YouTube, you'll be able to see these fields. So I might put Basic Guide here. And for the description, generally I would leave this blank. And what I would actually do is on YouTube, I will have default settings for what goes on every video. But when you upload from Resolve, it doesn't automatically add in those default YouTube videos. So I will just do chapters and markers here. And note this is choosing a specific color of marker. So if you want them to be video chapters on your YouTube video, these markers need to be the same color. So you check chapters and markers, which is going to add these timestamps to the video description. And then later when you edit your video on YouTube, you can just copy your upload defaults description into the description for each video and combine that with your chapter from markers. That's how I do it anyway. Visibility, if you're uploading from Resolve, I think you should almost always set this to private and then edit your video description and tags and everything else on your YouTube video. Probably upload a thumbnail as well before you actually change the visibility to public. So if you make it public and you upload it, it's going to be visible. So you can just change this to public when you finalized everything on your YouTube channel. And then category, well, for me, that would be how to and style. But this is just another way of getting your video to the audience that it's meant for. So when you have your video ready to export, you can just click Add to Render Queue. So before we add it to the render queue, we should give it a file name as well. So I'll just call this Basic Guide. Hit Browse and put it on your computer where you want to save your video. Click Save. So this will be the location it's going to save to and the file name with the extension .mp4, which is the video format. So we add to the render queue. So when you're ready, you can go ahead, select your job or jobs and hit Render All. It'll start exporting the video. You can see a preview of what's being exported right here. And when it's done, if we have upload directly to YouTube checked, it should try to upload our video to the platform. So we'll see either upload failed or upload succeed here. You can right click it and hit start upload again if it failed the first time. So here we can actually see this time it's going through, uploading the file. And of course you could manually use the studio interface for YouTube to put a video up there as well. So now when you go and check your YouTube account, you should see that video there listed privately, and you can go ahead and edit all of the settings corresponding to that. So one last thing to point out real quick is that when you render your timeline, you don't have to render the entire thing. So maybe you split it into parts. If you only want to export part of it to one video, you can find where you want to start the export, hit I, and then go to the endpoint and hit O. So in and out, everything between the in and out range is going to be the rendered part. And you'll see this render dropdown has two options, entire timeline and in out range, so that you know what's being exported. If I change it back to entire timeline, then that is going to mean that everything on the timeline is going to be exported, of course. So that's your two options there. Sometimes it does make sense to split your video. So that's going to just about cover it for this really basic dive into DaVinci Resolve 17. So I hope this video was pretty easy to understand. Of course, we didn't really dive into several of the other major functions of Resolve, like Fusion, which is for node-based editing of special effects, the color page for color grading and editing filters for your video using color wheels and sliders, stuff like that. And then the Fairlight page, which you can use for doing audio editing. So I've been Chris, thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see all of you in my future video content.